Okay, now we're going to show you how to generate a public and private key pair and put that on your CentOS VM and then log into the CentOS VM using the private and public key pair. What we call this is public key cryptography. And when you see it in in Xshell, you're going to see the option as using a public key. But the first thing we need to do to generate that is we need to go up here into Tools and go down to User Key Manager and click the left button. That will bring up a dialog box showing all the user keys currently created. Now, I have quite a few user keys already created. Ignore those. You probably have none. Your box is going to be empty here. So all you need to do is go ahead and click the Generate button. And you want to make sure the key type is RSA. I mean, we could do some others, but right now we're just going to stay focused on the RSA algorithm. And the key length can be anywhere from 2048 all the way up to 8192. But let's go ahead and leave it at 2048. 2048 is the minimum bit length that are required these days to be considered secure. A lot of people are moving up to 4096 now, but that's a conversation for another day. We're going to leave it at 2048. And I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And now it's generating a 2048-bit RSA key pair, a public and private key. And it's telling me that the public key pair has been created successfully. Click on Next and enter a name and passphrase of the new user key. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And I can name the key whatever I want here. It's probably a good idea for these purposes just to leave it default ID RSA 2048 because you don't have many keys right now. So just leave it like this. If you can change it if you really want to, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave mine as default. And the password to encrypt the user key. I'm not going to put a passphrase on this because we don't want to enter a passphrase every time we connect to the machine. We want it to be automatic. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this blank for now, not put anything in there, and I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And it says the passphrase is empty. The user key will be saved without encrypting its private key part. Yeah, that's fine for these purposes. Go ahead and click Yes. Okay, and so now we have a public key format here that's displayed in front of us. And there's a couple different formats we can choose from here, but we want to make sure the SSH2 open SSH format is there. So we have a couple options here. We can go ahead and copy and paste this right now, which I'm going to do. Copy. But I'm also going to show you another way in case you didn't copy it here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Finish. And now you can see this new key that I've entered here or created is now showing up in this list. If you didn't copy that public key portion in that last dialog box there, you can highlight this and go ahead and click Properties and then click on the public key tab up here and you can get the public key portion again. So what I want you to do is go ahead and highlight the whole thing, right click and go to Copy and copy that to your clipboard. And then go ahead and click OK. And close. We don't want anything to do with this right now. It's generated in Xshell and we're ready to go. Okay, now that we've generated the public key, we're ready to log on to the server. So you can go up here and click on this folder button to open a new folder. I mean, the dialog box to open your server, or you can just, what I like to do is hit Alt-O to open it, and that's automatic. It's just a hotkey that's easier than sliding the mouse over to the folder. You can open this either way, your sessions folder. But anyways, I already have my VM set up in here because in the previous class in the assignment section, I went through the steps and set it up. So I'm ready to connect. I'm just going to go ahead and double click that, and it's going to go ahead and ask me for a username because we're still logging in with a username and password now. We haven't set up SSH keys yet. We're about to. So I'm going to go ahead and click Enter. And now it's asking me for a password. I'm just going to go ahead and enter my password and boom, we are logged in. Now, you can see this text is kind of small. So what I'm going to start doing is customizing this a little bit and making the text a little bigger. I'm going to go to View, and then I'm going to go to, I believe it's under Properties. And if I go down to Terminal, I believe it is. Bear with me. I'm looking for, oh, here we go. Window and font size. I'm going to go ahead and take that font size up to like 16 or something because I'm blind. Yeah, that's better. That makes probably a little easier for you guys to see what I'm doing as well. So now that I have my font size up to 16 and I'm logged into my server, I'm going to type ls, and there's nothing in my home directory where my user resides. That's because I haven't put any files there yet, but that's going to change in a second. And then the way you can tell if you're in your user directory is you can see this little tilde here, this little squiggly line, which is called a tilde. That's your directory you're currently in, and tilde means you're in your user directory. And a way you can really confirm this is typing pwd, which stands for present working directory, and press enter, and you can see you're in /home/ and then your username. My username, since I am Ryan, my present working directory is /home/Ryan, but it's going to be /home/ your username, whatever you created. And as long as you're in that directory, you're in the right spot. If you ever need to get back to your own directory, let's say if you got out of this and you went into the home directory and you're in the different directory and you just want to get back to your own directory, all you do is type cd with nothing after it and press enter, and it brings you back to your home directory. So just make sure you're in your home directory before you start these instructions. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to make a directory, mkdir space dot or period SSH, and press enter. And if we type in ls now for list, we don't see anything yet. Why is that? Well, because the dot means hidden directory. Anytime you have a dot in front of a file name or a dot in front of a directory or anything, it means it's hidden from the ls command. But we can resolve that by typing ls space -a, and we can see the hidden directories and files inside of our home directory. So there were some files already here, it seems. We just didn't see them. And the directories are blue in our default configuration here. So this is the only directory in here. I can go ahead and type ls space -al for a long listing of a directory, and it's going to show me a little more information about these files. So you can see this right here, this D means it's a directory, and it's also blue. All these other ones are just random files, which we're going to talk about later on in this course, some of them at least, but we're just going to ignore those for now. So anyways, I made an SSH directory, and here are the permissions on this s.ssh directory. These permissions are wrong, and we need to set some correct permissions on this for our SSH keys to work. So we are going to type in chmod space, and then we're going to type in the permissions for this directory. And the permissions I want on this specific directory, I want read, write, and execute for the user only. And that means it's an octal value of 700, and we're going to go through the security settings later in this course, but for now, just trust me, chmod space 700, and then the directory we just created, and press enter. So now if we type ls space -all files and long format, we can see that the permissions have now changed. And so if you don't understand what these permissions all mean, don't worry. In a future class, we're going to go through this, okay? But just for now, just trust me, these are the permissions you want. It should say drwx and then have a bunch of dashes after it, okay? So that basically just the user yourself can only read, write, and change into this directory. So now with those permissions correct, I'm going to go ahead and cd to SSH into the directory. So now if I type present working directory, I can see I'm in home, Ryan, and then that hidden SSH directory that I'm in now, and there's nothing in here. No hidden files either. So I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm going to create a file named authorized keys. And there's a few ways we can do this. If you installed using the instructions that I gave you using installing CentOS 8 using a minimal install, there's only one text editor installed right now, and that is Vi. Now, Vi is a little cumbersome for new users to Linux to use. So if you're not comfortable with using Vi or Vim, I suggest you install something called Nano, and we're going to do that really quickly. So I want you to go ahead. We got to change to the root user to do this. And sudo isn't set up yet. So we're going to use that command that I told you not to use very much. But since we don't have this set up correctly to use sudo, we have to use su. Type in su, and it's going to ask you for the root password. Type in the root password, and it's going to change you to root temporarily while we install Nano. And I'm going to go ahead and type dnf space install Nano and press enter. And it says, okay, well, we want to install Nano, one package. This all looks good. I'm just going to go ahead and click yes, and it's going to go ahead and install Nano. That's a Nano text editor, which is very easy to use for you instead of Vi. Now, very important, you don't want to miss this step. You got to change back to the normal user of Ryan or whatever your user is. So to get out of this SU and now, see how your root here, we want to change back to Ryan. Or your username, and to get out of this root su, you type exit, and then exits out of that su shell, and you're no longer root, and you become your username again. Now that you're normal, you're the normal user again. Just make sure that you're still in that directory, okay? And when we're in there, now we can use the program called Nano. And again, if you want to use Vi, all the power to you. I use Vi and Vim all the time. It's just confusing for students. So we're going to use Nano, which is a lightweight text editor. Nano space, and we're going to create a new file called authorized keys, and press enter. And so this looks, there's a whole bunch of stuff down here, and you can type whatever you want in here. No worries, right? That's like a normal text editor, but not as nice as you would expect in Windows or something. This is all ANSI. That's what we call these characters. But it's a job done, and it's really easy to use. Okay, now that we're in the Nano program, I want you to go up to Edit here and put Paste, and that will paste the SSH key in a Nano. Now, this doesn't look like that whole SSH key, but what's happened is it's actually it's all on one line. So if I use the arrow keys, I can scroll all the way back and see that whole SSH key. It didn't put it on multiple lines. So if you keep going back, the start should say SSH-RSA, like that. And if I press the end key, I can get back to the end. If I press the home key, I can get back to the home, right? It's just like a normal text editor you'd expect. But anyways, if you have that long line like that, that's what you want. Now what we need to do is we need to go ahead, and we have two options. We can either write out, which is save, so that's Control-O, or we can just exit, and it'll ask us if we'd like to save it. So I'm just going to go Control-X for exit. And it says save modified buffer, answering no, we'll discard changes. Of course I want to. So I pressed Y for yes, and it says, what file name would you like to write? I'm just going to go ahead. It's already got their authorized keys because I put it in at the command line. I'm just going to press enter, and it takes me back to the shell. Now, I'm going to type ls to see if authorized keys is there. Okay, it is. The file's there, but it's not giving me any permissions to look at on this file. So what's that one command that we have to type? We have to type ls space -al from list all files and long format. Okay, it's very important that we set up these authorized keys properly. And what I mean by that is we want to make sure that these permissions are set up correctly. Right now, if I'm looking at this, the permissions mean that I can read and write this file. My group can read and write this file, but my group is Ryan and I'm the only one in that group, so that doesn't matter. But here's the real problem, is that other people on the system can also read this file. And that's a security risk in CentOS and RHEL. So we need to make sure that we set the proper permissions on this file so that CentOS or RHEL will be happy and allow us to use these public keys. So it's very important that you set this up correctly. If you don't, it's not going to work. So pay attention. We need to go chmod space, and then we need to set the octal for read and write. So this is 1. So this is execute right here. So that octal, that's 1, that's 2, and that's 4. So, and we just want this one. So that's 6 there. And we want 0 and 0 for these parts. So 600 we want to set on these authorized keys. And I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And ls space -al shows me that I have read and write only for myself on authorized keys now. And that's the correct permissions we want. With that all set up, we should be able to log in using these keys now, using Xshell. So without terminating this one session, I'm going to open up another session by hitting Alt-O. But this time, instead of just double-clicking here, I'm going to go to Properties, and I'm going to go up to Authentication, and I'm going to take this and go down to Public Key now, and put my username as Ryan in there. But you notice how password is grayed out now. With public keys, we don't need to use a password. All we have to do is choose that key that we set up. And remember, I have a ton of keys here. You're not going to have all these keys, but just choose your one key in the list and make sure that you got it set there. And the passphrase, we didn't put a passphrase in for that private key, so you don't have to put one in here. That's okay. Just go ahead and press OK. And so now this session should be set up to log in using a public key instead of your password. So if I just double click this, it created a second session, and you notice how it didn't even ask me for my password there. Boom, I'm in with a public key. That is a lot more secure than using a password. People forget passwords. People write passwords down on sticky notes, you know. Using public and private key pairs, you are so much more secure on these Linux systems, and that's how we want to set up most logins for anywhere that you want to log into a Linux system, if possible. So that's it, and I hope you learned something in this session.